Welcome to Simulator Review, helping you find quality flight simulation with the world's most comprehensive listings and reviews of simulators. A warm welcome to our podcast for the flight simulation community. My name is Alexis, and in this episode I'm joined by my colleague from simulatorreview.com, Elliott.
Hello.
If you're a regular listener of our podcast, welcome back. And if you are new to our podcast, then we are pleased you found us. You're in the right place for the top podcast on simulator venues and getting the most from your simulator experiences. We hope you do stick around, and we do recommend episodes 1 and 2 for a great introduction to us and our website, simulatorreview.com. This episode will be looking at another of our Blue Pin feature reviews for a simulator which we visited. We have done a few episodes dedicated to our feature review venues, so do have a listen to those. In this episode, we'll be looking at Deeside Flight Simulators based in Ellesmere Port in Cheshire in the UK. As well as chatting about the review itself, which you can read on our site, we want to give you some background of our review and some discussion about what we thought the venue was really like. Before we get on to Deeside, it's time for our regular simulator news update, where we cover news both at simulatorreview.com and in the wider simulating community. And for this, we gave it to Elliott. So, Elliott, what have you got for us for the sim news this week?
Thanks, Alexis. I thought we'd first look at the website and our podcast listening. So we've managed to double the number of listeners that we have in the continent of Africa. So thanks to all 4 of you. That's appreciated, and glad you're listening. And we also had some interesting news from our Carlos, who said that we're the number 2 aviation podcast in Norway. So we're very proud to have been told about that, and we shall endeavour to keep up the good work. In terms of the website, there's been some new websites added since November time. So in the UK, Ness Aviation, up in Scotland, and True Flight Simulation down in Surrey. There's also Cheshire or Cheshire, however it's pronounced, which is quite unique. That's a PA-28 simulator on the airfield in the Midlands, Simflight in Germany, and LTV Simuladores in Brazil. So we've got those on. So have a look at those under latest editions in the website. I don't know if anyone's managed to see us. We talked quite a lot about Infinite Flight and the iPad flight simulator. We've been on that quite a lot, especially since we're not flying in the real world. And we thought we'd try out some of the new aeroplanes and also some of the more challenging destinations. So we took the new 757 into Quito. We've had a go flying Airbuses and 737s into Paro in Bhutan. And where else have we been, Alexis? We've been to...
I think we've been to... Lukla,
in
recently as well. Yeah. So interested to see which one you're going to pick next for our next outing.
Yeah, if you've got any suggestions, anyone, send us a message and we'll have a go. What we've been doing is we've been taking some snapshots. We've been running the venue with the ATC. So we've been having one of us running the ATC, and then the other 2 have been flying in and providing a little bit of traffic and generally having go. So Andrew tends to bail out, doesn't he, and fly the ATC, and you and I tend to be the guinea pigs going in and out of these places. But if you're interested in seeing what we've been up to, have a look on Twitter. We've put some pictures there and put some comments on there as well, and you can see what we've been up to and how we've been finding them.
Yeah, I think Andrew might be slightly against any kind of approach which doesn't involve straight-in ILS sometimes, but...
That's the long haul in him showing. I mean, that took a year or so to beat that out of me.
I think what's interesting is, obviously, over the last year, we've had limited ability to visit sim venues, and we've mentioned Infinite Flight before a few times in the sim news, and it's a great app for low budget, limited amount of setup in terms of getting peripherals, but able to get some really good experiences flying around. And we found, relatively speaking, flying into Paro, Lukla, the terrain, the scenery is good enough that we've found that both challenging and enjoyable. So it's a great way to kind of keep your hand in when you can't get to sim venues at the moment.
Yeah, there's the convenience of it. We sound like Infinite Flight fanboys, don't we? But it's so convenient just to have this there and operating in the background. And it's been great trying these places. I mean, if any of you have got any suggestions about where we could try next, or even if you fancy joining us in somewhere, do let us know and we'll set it up.
Excellent. So thanks for that, Elliott, and some interesting news there, both on new venues added to our directory and what we've been getting up to in the last few weeks. In this episode, the main topic of discussion is one of our Blue Pin featured reviews, and this time we've chosen Deeside Flight Simulators in Ellesmere Port in the UK. As you may have heard in our previous podcasts, these featured reviews are our top category, where we have been to the venue and done a thorough in-person review to really bring you all the detail about what the venue offers and what the simulator is really like. As Elliott and I went to this simulator venue, it's time for someone else to take the podcast left-hand seat and ask the questions. Andrew is away this week, so instead Gavin is here to take the role. As you may know, Gavin is part of our team at simulatorreview.com as one of our expert reviewers. And if you've listened to our review of Dream Aero in Dubai in episode 16, you'll have heard him before. So, time to take the seat and get some podcast command hours under his belt in leading this discussion. And over to you, Gavin.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alexis. And thank you for my first left-hand seat as well. What was it that interested you about going to the sim, and sort of why did you want to go there?
Yeah, so it's an interesting simulator, and the one thing that did catch our eye is that it has a number of simulators there. It's not just one type. So the venue there has an A320, it has a 737-800, and also a helicopter, which is something we don't see very often at all. I think it's also a venue which has a good reputation in the UK, and I think, Elliott, you heard of them before as well and were quite keen to visit them because of that.
Yeah, this was one of my one of the first ones I'd heard of, and I'd been aware of these guys for a few years. I think they're sort of one of the first mainstream entertainment simulators, and that sounds quite bad actually, because their simulators are really quite good. But rather than full flight, full motion simulators that the airlines would use, these guys are catering for this other market that we've been looking at extensively through this podcast. So they were one of the original guys in the UK providing this experience in this facility. So yeah, the fact that it had a 320, a 737, a helicopter, and it appears really quite professionally well run, I was very keen on getting in touch and going and having a look.
Quite good that you've mentioned that they've got 3 different simulators, the A320, 737 and the helicopter. For you guys, what did you find that was most realistic and true to form?
Well, what I found straight away about the simulators is all 3 of them are made from actual aircraft parts. So the A320 sim is an ex-Alitalia Airbus A321. The 737 is actually an ex-737-300, but they have done some good work with the flight deck. It used to fly for BA. I've actually flown it as well, I think, Tango Golf, so that was a good one. And the helicopter is an Agusta 109 that had been chopped off at the back and just had the cabin section with a good wraparound visuals in there. So that one was actually really good, because you could open the door and you're actually getting into the helicopter fuselage itself. So yeah, that's what attracted us to the simulators, our initial thoughts. What's really nice is cabin sections as you walk in. I know Alexis does like to see that as well. That adds a lot to levels of realism. And yeah, it was just they were very good. So first impressions of each simulator were really very good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You've picked up on cabin sections, and as you say, that's something I always like to see. I think it helps immerse you, but also it's great when you're coming with a couple of friends or family that they can sit in the cabin and all be part of that experience as well and really feel like they're there and enjoying it with you, rather than being sitting in a waiting room or on a sofa somewhere. Even the helicopter has a cabin section with some very nice leather seats in the back.
The original helicopter seats are still in there, which is nice, because it was a VIP machine beforehand.
Yeah, so certainly they can all be part of the experience with you. I think all 3 of them, realistic, good visuals, systems as you'd expect. In terms of feel, I've fortunate, I've flown the 737 before, so before we visited, I'd been a few months previously with a friend, and we both found it was very realistic. Certainly all to a very good standard, I thought.
It's a shame we didn't get to try it out. It was very busy when we went, and it was one of our first reviews, actually, this. So we were still finding our feet as to what we were looking for and how we like to conduct a visit. So we didn't actually get to try the simulators. So we do intend to contact Deeside and head back up there, because between us, I've flown a 73 and an Airbus, never flown a helicopter, but I'd love to have a go. But what was a good sign is that the venue was busy. We had a short time there, but the venue was busy. So this must mean that it's a popular and a realistic product. So we took that to be a good sign. What we can also say about the realism is the owners, we spent a bit of time with Dave, and he was keen to tell us about the functioning circuit breakers. A lot of venues tend to do without the circuit breakers. It adds a lot of cost, complexity. They're quite hard to simulate, and these guys have included it. And what they needed, or why they needed these circuit breakers, is they do intend to certify their simulators with the CAA, and circuit breakers are a function of that requirement. Getting these sims certified, and this is for FMPT2 standard to actually train people in, is really expensive and time consuming, and it's a good testament to these guys wanting to develop and prove that their sims are very good and realistic.
Moving on then from that, in terms of how to go about the booking process for this, would you have to book a simulator by itself, or do you get time on all three of those simulators?
Yeah, so the booking process is good, and I think they did have an online booking engine that you could use. I think they've turned that off temporarily because of all the restrictions that are in place at the moment, I think just to ensure that they can continue to deliver the level of service they want. You can book time on each of the simulators individually. I didn't see an option to book a package where you could have time on all three. Going back to our kind of view of the location and the venue as well, good location where they are, near the motorway network in the northwest of the UK. The one thing we did notice, because it's all on an light industrial estate, as they all usually are, these simulator venues, it wasn't immediately obvious when you came onto the estate where the venue was. It was a bit tucked away in the back. Perhaps to the first-time visitor could do with a bit more signage, I think. But yeah, I think in terms of the booking process, in terms of the contact that we had with them, arranging our visit and previously having said I've been before, it was all to a very good standard, we thought.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add in to Deeside's credit, we haven't really talked about the value for money yet, but what is good there is they've definitely put some thought into catering for everybody, and I'm a really big fan of these venues allowing absolutely everyone to be able to attend and take part. So their seats can be fully removed to allow someone less stable to be able to get in. Everywhere's ramped, and even the facility, the toilet facilities, they've thought about that. So the doorways are wider. They've got help in there as well. So it's a degree of mobility is required to use these simulators, but the staff are very willing to talk about it, and they've done as much as they can. I think that's reasonable to accommodate everyone. So that's well worth talking about, because we've been to some places where, quite frankly, you've got to go upstairs, squeeze through small corridors and doorways, and then climb in. The 737 is not a big aeroplane. Climbing into the flight deck there is really quite tricky for someone. So these guys have put some good thought and effort into it.
I can only imagine then that their overall welcome and the quality of their instruction then continues in the same ilk.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, once they realised who we were and our backgrounds and what we were trying to achieve, I've got to stress this was one of our first visits, so we probably weren't the most polished or refined duo to turn up, but we got to start somewhere, and we did our best. And I think once we got chatting and they realised how things were, we had a really good talk with Dave and access all areas. So it was really good. As we said before, we'd love to go up and try the simulators and be able to comment a little bit more about those. But from what we observed and what we were able to ask, it was good. We also heard that there were lots of airline pilots coming to use their facilities. So I imagine the instructions of a level that's sufficient for that.
Yeah, I think just to go back and just to kind of briefly talk about the venue itself. So when you come in, there's a kind of reception area, some sofas where you can sit and wait. There's also separate briefing areas. So those are the things we like to see. And as you say, the one thing that impressed us is that, real world commercial pilots are coming in there to use that for preparation for assessments and courses and interviews and things like that. And it usually, if a simulator venue is able to attract those kind of people repeatedly, it usually speaks both to the quality of the equipment and the simulators they've got, but also to the quality and level of proficiency of the instructors they've got. But you're right, Elliot. If you look at the website, if you look at what they're offering, it's the whole range. It's right from simulator experiences if you're a complete beginner and never been before, all the way through to things like interview assessment and preparation, familiarization with new types for pilots who want to move to another airline and perhaps swap into a different type of aircraft. That speaks to the breadth of what they're able to offer, basically.
So that brings us towards the end of what we were talking about there. What are your overall thoughts about the simulator, and would you go back to it? Would you be happy to spend your own money on the simulation, and did it meet all of your expectations going into it?
Well, this is the acid test for us, really, is would you spend your own cash? And I mean, ask an airline pilot if they're going to spend their own cash. It's a good place if they will. So yes, I would. If I was up there and or I was a bit more local to it, I think it would be a really good venue to go to. There's a lot of choice up in the north of England for sim venues, and these guys are good. They're well up there. They offer a lot of choice of aircraft. There are 3 simulators, and they're varied. Airbus, very different to 737, very different experience. And then to have an Agusta 109 helicopter simulator as well. That's fantastic. So these guys cater to a big market. Their simulators are good. It's a good venue, and I certainly would spend my hard-earned cash visiting them. And it's a great place to take a family with you. This could be a family event and everyone have a go. Having those cabin sections there, everybody can be part of the experience. So it might not be a venue in terms of area itself. We've been to places where there's lots around, but it's well worth a trip just to these guys.
Yes, I'd agree with that. And I think one thing Alex just picked up on having fun there is the things they offer include things like corporate days and team building, and it's certainly something they can offer because they have a number of different simulators, so you can have people doing different things in each simulator all at once. I personally would spend my hard-earned cash there on the simulators they've got.
I was just going to say, it's not a modern venue. We've been to places that are very modern, up-to-date, with sort of quirky elements like decor, computer screens everywhere, etc. So it's a more traditional venue, but in terms of what they offer and where they are and how they do it, it is very good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, certainly.
Great, fantastic. Another simulator venue added to our site as one of our featured review venues. And with a variety of simulator types there, it sounds like it's well worth a visit if you're nearby. Thank you, Elliott and Alexis, for that. With that, I hand back over control to Alexis.
Right, thank you for Gavin for leading us on that discussion and showing his proficiency at the cruise pilot position, which has been firmly held by Andrew in the past. I wonder if he's a little bit concerned about his position here and whether he's being usurped by Gavin. What do you think, Elliott?
Yeah, I think Andrew's due a check ride, don't you?
I think this is the problem with cruise pilots. Sometimes they tend to cruise a little bit too much. Right, well, thank you very much. We'll have more episodes covering our Blue Pin featured review venues in the future, so do keep an eye out for those. So, there you go, a chat about Deeside Flight Simulators in Ellesmere Port in the UK. A very interesting set of simulators there with the 737, A320 and a helicopter simulator all in one venue. Do have a look at the review on our site as well. There are some photos that we took when Elliott and I visited, so you can see what it's like. If you've been to Deeside, do let us know what you think. You can add your comments to the review on our site, simulatorreview.com, and we'd love to hear what you thought and whether you enjoyed your experience. Also, if there are other simulator venues you're interested in us reviewing, do let us know. In our next episode, we'll have a look at another of the subjects covered by our articles on our site, and we'll be going into a bit more detail behind the article. This time it will be the second part of our 2-part series on preparing for a sim session. In episode 17, we did part 1, where we discussed how to prepare and get the most for your sim session from the point of view of a beginner or a novice. And in our next episode, number 19, we'll be looking at how to prepare as an advanced and experienced sim goer. I hope you'll join us again for that in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, please do subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on your podcast service of choice. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a star rating and review. Until next episode, it's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from Elliott.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from Gavin.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Simulator Review podcast. We would love your feedback, so please do comment and rate us. Please follow, share, like and subscribe on all our social media channels, where you can see regular updates on new simulator listings and reviews, as well as our latest articles. Until next time, happy simming.